I want to tell you a little bit about Buddy Boyd. Those of you that don't know Buddy, Buddy is an amazing individual. He, what I absolutely love is his daughter just started tennis. And so that's my favorite new thing about Buddy. But he runs our Frontier division. He's the division manager. Buddy started with the company in 2008 in Johnson County. Just to give you a brief history of him, he graduated with a degree from Mizzou. He sold 20,000 during his first summer, and as an assistant manager, he ran 2 branch offices while in college. But he's always a person who focuses on growth, thus his message. His first branch, I want you guys to hear this, his very first branch, he did 140,000. That's more than what's double in the average branch. And then his second branch, he grew it to 250,000, $250,000 done by a college student in the summertime. He became the pilot sales manager of a $1 million summer office in St. Louis, and then was promoted to district manager in 2013. He was the number 2 district manager in Vector in total and new business in 2018, and promoted to the Frontier division manager in 2020. He also is a 3-time President's Banquet qualifier. So his career sales have eclipsed $13 million. And so some highlights, their division is up 30% for the year and 31% in new business for the year. And so some of his proudest accomplishments, developing the leaders on our team, he writes, through the transition and changes in our business. And also he's married with 3 kids. Laura, married to his wife, Laura, with Ava, Weston, and Sophia. He's part of the BMW club, loves sports and fitness, and favorite quarterback is, his only weakness is he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, but he's got bragging rights over those of us that are Chicago Bears fans. So digging in with growth, let's turn it over to Buddy Boyd.
Thanks a lot, Greg. And yes, it's that time of the year, Chiefs camp. It's on my dreams list, in fact, to go to Chiefs camp. So I'm going to try to knock that off in the next 2 weeks. And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited to be giving this talk as well. Expanding my capacity is something that I pride myself on. And it's one of the things I really love to teach as well, because it's something that I practice daily. And it definitely was a perspective shift for me that I got from Vector when I was a college student. So before we dive in, what I want to do first is I want to give you guys an opportunity to share. And I have a question for you, and we'll do breakouts for this question, by the way. So we'll get into groups, and we'll go into breakout for a few minutes just to talk about, I want you to think back. Maybe it was recently, maybe it was a while ago, maybe it was school, sports, Cutco, other job, life, health, whatever it might be. I want you to think about a time that you were really productive with your time. Could have been a day, it could have been a week, it could have been an extended amount of time, a year. And you were executing at a really high level. What strengths, skills, and habits were you deploying daily to succeed? So take a second, I want you to jot that down. We're gonna move into a breakout for 5 or 6 minutes to share with your partner. And when you do this, I want you to share for 1 minute each and try to write down some of the common themes that you notice as you get into these breakouts. So when we move in, if one of you can volunteer to be a scribe of your group and just write down some of the common themes. And then when we come back, we'll give an opportunity to share. So I'll give you about 10 more seconds to jot down a time in your life that you were extremely productive. Might have been recently, might have been this push, it might have been a few years ago. What were the strengths, skills, and habits that you deployed daily to succeed? If we can go ahead and start the breakouts, that'd be great. All right, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to drop in the chat box for me some of the common themes that you heard as the shares were going on. So drop in the chat box for me some of the common themes that you heard in your groups as we were going through the reflection. So I'm seeing time management, persistent. I'm seeing planning, morning routine, motivation, being persistent, regimented schedule, no downtime, prioritizing, a busier schedule, being more productive, time management, routine, time maximization, full schedules, getting rid of distractions, waking up early, having a goal, hard work, busy schedule, wise, consistency, stepping out of your comfort zone, planning, a sense of purpose, routine, end goal in mind, patience, love it, being a self-starter, strong, wise. So, and thank you guys for sharing and dropping that in there. As you listen to me kind of listing that stuff off, and if you look at the chat box, you can obviously tell that there's a pretty common theme when it comes to being really effective with what you want to do. Now, I like to sometimes go and look at the definition of certain words, and I was looking at, I thought I knew what capacity meant. And I looked at a definition online, and there was actually two, most words have a couple different definitions. So I'm going to share with you the definition for capacity. And there's two, and I thought this was really interesting. The first definition is the maximum amount that something can contain. And I think that's how I always viewed it, just like I can do a lot, I can handle a lot, I can deal with a lot. But the second definition is very interesting. It's the amount that something can produce. And for me, that kind of hit hard. And, because it's one thing to just do a lot of stuff. But what I realized when it comes to expanding your capacity, why you do all that stuff matters. So that way you can give, you can produce more, you can create a greater impact for yourself and others around you. So I want to share with you guys some things that I feel like I was able to accomplish even as a student. And, Kyle mentioned my background and some of the things I did during college. And, I feel like I did a lot, and I reflect on these things, and it brings me confidence as to what was possible then and what's even more possible in the future, because I think back to who I was, and I definitely wasn't the best version of myself 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I'm definitely not the best version of myself even today. But I remember, I was very involved in sports in high school. And then after high school is over, there was no sports for me. So I wanted to stay in shape, and I wanted to, be healthy. And I remember working out and having trouble staying motivated, having trouble like going to the gym and things like that. And I heard something at a Vector event. It was about booby trapping yourself for success. And you guys have heard multiple speakers mention that. And I remember getting online. I posted an ad on Craigslist that was titled "Workout Buddy for Mizzou Students." And basically, and I had it in parentheses, not certified. So I basically had people that applied to work out with me and paid me to work them out. And I just told them, hey, I'm not certified, but I worked out for these years, and this is the skill set that I have. And that kind of forced me into this routine and this pattern where I was waking up early, and I was kind of forced to work out with these people. And that was really cool. And that was an example of booby trapping myself for success. I remember being in a fraternity during college. I remember obviously working with Cutco during college and getting into Leadership Academy. And I remember adding a major. And then I added another major. I remember joining the events team and getting field service call trained as well, and getting events trained, and then joining the CGC team. I remember doing service calls. I remember doing all this while preparing to run 2 branches. I remember having very aggressive withholding set up for myself because I wanted to basically live broke so I could save for the future. And I was able to save $10,000 as a student and pay for school myself. I remember one semester, all these things I'm mentioning, some of them happened in the same semesters at school in the same year. Some of them were, staggered. But I remember one semester, there was a service learning project I had to do in school. And I selected the project that I had to wake up and be at a elementary school at 7:30 a.m. to ride these kids or it was a bike stop, and I had to ride these kids on a bike. They basically followed me to their school. And it was a service link project. Then after school, we did an after school activity. I remember even before that, I joined the Mizzou scuba team, which is just a class, and it turned into like a passion that I was really excited about. And I remember the pool sessions were at 6 a.m. And that really, really challenged me. And if you missed 3 pool sessions, you had to drop the class. I remember the spring before my pilot summer, I told my DVM, I was like, how do we have a great summer? And we were planning, we were talking about it. And one of the outcomes that I came up with to, again, booby trap myself for success and really stretch myself was, how can we win this summer before the summer even happens? And what that resulted in was me committing to driving to St. Louis every weekend for roughly 8 weeks prior to the summer starting to plan and prepare and get integrated into the team. And we had $1 million summer. I remember traveling during my college years a lot. And on top of all that, I had a girlfriend, which takes up the most time, I think, out of everything. So it seems like a lot. And some people would say, hey, slow down, take some off your plate. And what Vector taught me is the value of expanding your capacity. And I've always wanted to, as Dane would say, increase the size of my plate. And when you're really passionate about who you want to be in life and the life you want to live, it's easy to find reasons to keep working hard. Now, there's also a lot of lessons in there, and there's a lot of challenges. And I want to definitely share with you guys how I made it all work and how I even make it work today. I think, of course, a common theme that you guys put into the chat box was time management and having a good schedule. And I think setting up a schedule definitely is a great place to start. I'm going to share another slide with you all. And there's a object lesson. You guys have probably seen this before, but it's basically where a professor has a jar, and on a table, he's got some big rocks, small rocks, some sand, and some gravel. And he puts all the big rocks in the jar, and he asks the class if the jar is full. And they all say yes. And then he puts the small rocks in there, the pebbles, and he says, well, is the jar full now? And they all say yes. And then he puts the gravel in there. And he asks if the jar is full, and they all say yes. And then he puts the sand in there. And he asks if it's full, and they all say yes. And then he says, are you sure? He opens up a Coke and pours the Coke into it. Gets everything all wet inside, right? And he says, because you're never too busy in life to have a Coke, as Mike Dawood would say. So a lot of people, when it comes to prioritizing and time management, they just do it all wrong. They're really unproductive because they put the little things in there that aren't the priorities. They misalign what their priorities are, and they end up not being able to accomplish what they really want. But if you organize and if you prioritize the right way, you can really accomplish a lot more than you thought you were capable of. So yes, number one, your schedule needs to be dialed in for sure. You can fit a lot more in your schedule than you think. There should be no empty time. You have to put things in your schedule, though, to make them fit the right way. And that's when you're able to do what you're really capable of. Now, there's lots of different interpretations of this example. But for me, and you guys heard this earlier, Connor mentioned it. You heard Colton mention it yesterday. You've heard a handful of people mention the have tos and the need tos and the should dos and the want tos. And I'm going to walk you through that really quick, just to give you some examples of what that should look like and why that's important. So the have tos are the things that are specific. They have immediate negative consequences. And these are, we have a lot of have tos sometimes. The need tos are not specific. They have immediate negative consequences. The should dos, they're not specific in terms of time. You can kind of do them whenever, and they don't really have an immediate negative consequence. And then the want tos are really, really important to planning your schedule, but sometimes they can dominate everything else. I'm going to drop a link into the chat box for you guys. And this is an exercise that I created to grow my capacity. And I want to kind of walk you through some of them. So the first thing on here, if you open up the document, let me pull mine up real quick here. Sorry, hold on one second. All right. Got it. All right. So the first thing on here is getting your mind right. Like, what am I after? And so it's important to write down your goals, your outcomes, and it can be for the week, for the month, for the campaign, whatever it might be. The second thing is, do I have a planner and is it easily accessible? And that's a yes or no question. The third thing is, who else knows my schedule and can hold me accountable? Do you have an accountability buddy or mentor or coach or somebody that's going to bring you up and support you in this way? The fourth question is, how serious am I about these goals? Like, how am I going to feel? What's it going to do for my life if I actually accomplish them? And what's it going to do for my life if I don't? Is there a short-term or long-term consequence? And list as many as you can with this. Do I need to make adjustments from last week? I think it's important to forgive yourself, be flexible, and move forward. And the last question is, how can I trap myself for success this week? What will challenge me? You have to have challenges in front of you and those deadlines to force you to grow at a faster rate. So by answering these questions week in and week out, you've expanded your capacity. You've started to challenge yourself in your thinking. And I think it definitely starts in your mind. Now, in the second part of the document, and I'll pull the slides back up, we have the different things that you can plan in your schedule. So the have-tos, again, these are things that are specific in time. They have immediate negative consequences. These are scheduled things that are not movable. Okay. Everybody's pretty good at doing the have-tos. This is like going to class. You got a doctor's appointment, team meeting. These are things that are like built in automatically. I was in a fraternity, so I remember having like chapter, right? Or if you played a sport, it might be practice. These are the big boulders, the big rocks in your schedule. And then we get to the need tos. The need tos, you can kind of do them whenever. There's no negative, consequence. This is things like, there's no immediate negative consequence, but if you let them pile up, then they will have a negative consequence. So these are things like eating food, right? You're flexible with the time that you eat breakfast, flexible with lunchtime, sleeping. You can be flexible when you go to bed and things like that. Homework, it doesn't have to be done at a specific time. Demos and phoning, you have control over when you want to schedule that stuff. So those are the need tos. The should dos, there's no specific time. There's no immediate consequence at all. These are things that get you ahead of the curve. So this is like starting early on your homework. This is like personal growth, phoning, doing demos, planning your week out, right? Now, what's interesting is the relationship between the should dos and the have tos. Most people in the world are only focused on taking care of the have tos and the need tos and not the should dos. So you constantly say to yourself, I should exercise. I should eat better. I should plan. I should read more. I should sell, but then they never do. They literally just should all over themselves. Stop shooting all over yourself. I should phone. I should do demos. I should start reading next week's homework. Right? And this is where vector guilt comes in. You guys ever felt vector guilt before? You know what I'm talking about. It's the exhausting part of being an entrepreneur, where you're feeling like you just can't stop work. You can't forget about work, right? You can't turn it off. You worry about doing demos. You worry about doing phone calls. You tell yourself you're going to do them tonight, and then you don't do it. And then you try to forget about it. And then you tell yourself you're going to do it the next day. And then the next day comes. And then by the end of the week, you look back and you're like, man, I've been worried and stressed and I'm exhausted. And you've made no money because you worried about doing demos and phone calls instead of actually doing them. Then you're like, man, I can't do this vector thing. It's stressing me out. It's too much. This isn't right for me. No, you're just not good at managing yourself and your time. And then there's the want tos. All right. These are just as, if not more important to put in your schedule. And here's why. If you don't put time in your schedule to do the things that you want to do, then they will actually take over the should dos and the need tos. They will actually dominate your life. And the should dos and the need tos, that's where you actually earn your success in life. That's where your life is accelerated. So an example of this is you probably worked on homework for a couple hours, and then you're like, man, that was exhausting. I just studied for like 3 hours. I need a break. And then you go home and you watch Netflix for 4 hours, or you go hang out with friends for 6 hours. And then you come back to your homework later and you have so much to do and you work super, super hard then on it. And you're like, man, I'm exhausted. I need another break. I just pulled an all-nighter. Now, obviously you should relax. I think that's really important, but you want to have planned relaxation. I call it carefree timelessness. You want to have planned fun. It's okay to do nothing as long as nothing is planned. And here's something else that I learned early in my career as I got into the vector opportunity and kind of saw the bigger part of life. You know, I grew up in the inner city, and most of my life I didn't have like cool opportunities to do really cool things. And once I came to Vector, I started thinking bigger about what I wanted to do. I started thinking bigger about fun I wanted to have. Some of you guys think way too small about your want tos. Like for me, going to 11 countries during college was fun. Fully fun at spring breaks in Mexico, that's fun. Christmas money where you can buy gifts for everybody that you love, that's fun. Checking things off your dreams list, that's fun. Driving a free BMW is fun. Getting a Rolex is fun. Having $10,000 saved is fun and cool. Having no debt is fun. Front row tickets to your favorite concert or sporting event, that's fun. Being a butt kicker and being so impressive that you get invited to flight night. So there's limo night and then there's flight night. And that's where like Mike or one of the CEOs of a company flies you somewhere and you get to have a lot of fun with them, or you get to golf with them. You get to hang out with the DVMs of the CEOs. It's one thing to play video games with your friends. It's another thing to buy an Airbnb and go to the Super Bowl with your friends. I want you to think bigger about your fun, because those short-term sacrifices, they're a lot easier when you're thinking bigger about the fun that you really want to have and your dreams in life. I'll work 3 months hard to cross off some of those things on my dreams list. So I want to challenge you on this stuff, the parties, the friends, the gaming, the social media, the family. How can you elevate that to another level? And it's empowering. It's really powerful. When you get everything in your schedule all the way down to like brushing your teeth, you're going to reach a whole new level of productivity. And you're not going to be stressing about the things that you have to do. By the way, when everything's in your mind, it seems unmanageable, right? When it's on a list, like a to-do list, it's a little better. But when it's in a schedule, you know you have time for it and it feels achievable. You can be extremely successful and minimize your stress because you know what's coming up in your schedule. So I'm going to definitely give you some more tips on managing your schedule that I found helpful. But there's this rule, Parkinson's law, and it says that work expands as to fill the time available for its completion. This is why you tell yourself, I work better under pressure. You don't. You just have extreme focus when you're under pressure, when you have less time and when you have a deadline. You could have that same focus if you were just more self-disciplined. You have to focus when you know you have other things in your schedule. I know this is a fact because I'm married and I have 3 kids. I have to be off at a specific time because I have to be a dad and a husband. I do more now than I did as a single branch manager. I do way more now than I did when I was a college kid. I'm not even sure what I even did back then, come to think of it. And I just listed off a bunch of things, but like when I think about it, I was like, I had all the time in the world. But that's the issue. That's the way I felt. So have a kid, get married, and then you'll be you'll be better off. Or have a couple kids. That'll press you for time. So again, the handout, if you look at the handout, this is an exercise that I want you to spend 10 minutes on every week. And go through and ask yourself these questions. What are my have tos? What are my need tos? What are my should dos? And what are my want tos? And the good news is you're already on a winning streak. Being here has expanded your capacity. So you can check off week 1. And I would encourage you to do this next week and the week after, and challenge yourself. Give yourself a personal challenge to do this for 10 minutes for the next 6 weeks. I promise you, you will expand your capacity. You will be more effective. You will be more efficient. So again, know your outcome, make a schedule, share your schedule, commit to it. Adjust and recommit. There's going to be adjustments. And that's why that question on there, the 5th question is, do I need to make an adjustment from last week? Because when you have in your mind, this is how things are going to go the entire fall, that's not how things work in real life. Patrick Mahomes, the greatest football player in the history of mankind, he calls audibles occasionally. He scrambles out of the pocket and throws lasers while being sacked. It happens. That's all part of it. But you got to forgive yourself and move forward. And then creating catalysts. What I love about the catalyst and the schedule is, again, this is booby trapping yourself for success. So for me, it was having people pay me to work out with them. For me, it was like doing the 6 a.m. pool session. For me, it was like being a pilot in the spring instead of just in the summer. Now, get to my last slide. I do have a couple thoughts on procrastination, because a lot of you in your mind, you might say to yourself, okay, all this sounds good, but I just struggle. Like I put things off, right? We already talked about some of that, but we all procrastinate in certain ways. I procrastinate. Okay. But it really comes down to like your poor emotional management. And in leadership, learning how to be a good leader is less about learning to lead other people. It's more about learning to lead yourself. And the more we practice our ability to lead ourselves when we're going through difficult times, the more we practice our ability to manage our negative views towards certain tasks, the better we're going to become at execution. So you heard this said earlier yesterday, embrace the suck, right? Embrace it. Know that that's part of your growth. Practice gratitude. You can't be anxious and great and thankful at the same time. They don't coexist. There's other tools. I call this my abundance toolkit, right? There's a great book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I encourage you to get it. It's something that we'll probably go through in TLA. Okay. Exercise is something that always keeps me on point. I always show up better after I work out. It's just a fact. Gratitude, acts of kindness. You heard yesterday, Leah mentioned savers. Having an accountability buddy. Always having a challenge in front of you. And if none of those work, by the way, you pick up the phone and call any of the other 300 people on this call, and they will probably help you out. Because we're all in this together. You have such an amazing support system to help you through these challenges. You're not in this alone. People engage in this irrational cycle of chronic procrastination because of an inability to manage negative moods around a task. So view things in the positive way that they should be viewed. Time is finite. You only get so much. So you want to work on purpose. You want to play on purpose. You want to rest on purpose. Don't let yourself or anyone else waste your time. You are the architect of your time. Not your parents, not your friends, not your manager. It's you. Another important lesson that I've learned is even if you do everything right, great results sometimes don't instantly happen. And this is where people can say things like, well, I worked hard last week and I didn't sell what I wanted to, so why try again? That is a trap. That is a lie, right? It's the persistent and constant effort. Some of the things I did 10 years ago are paying off today. So remember that. And for me, I didn't realize how much an effect expanding my capacity would have on me until I got married. And then I had a kid. And then I got promoted. And then I had another kid. And then I had another kid. And then I had family challenges. And then I bought a house. And then there's the pressures of the world. It's been a rocky road, far from perfect, tons of mistakes, tons of failures. But I'm so happy that I keep going because all of it has led me to this very moment that I'm speaking to you all and realizing my potential and the calling that I have to live the life of my dreams and do everything that God put me on this earth to do and inspire you guys to do the same. Thank you, guys.
Whoa, that was legit.
Fire again, buddy. That was awesome. I want to go exercise. All right. That was great. Outstanding, buddy. Fantastic.